On this week's episode, we go back in time and we take a look at one of the most emblematic parts of Portuguese history, culture, and heritage, Azulejos, Portuguese tiles. I have a fascinating conversation with Ines Feliciano. Ines is born and raised in Portugal, has traveled and worked all over the world, but keeps coming back home. And Ines is an expert in the conservation and restoration of Portuguese tiles. We discuss, amongst other things, the history of Portuguese tiles through the different centuries, what makes these tiles so beautiful, fascinating, and what makes them art. We talk about why Ines loves touching and working and restoring on these beautiful pieces. Ines gives us a north to south overview of some of the most beautiful buildings, churches that have the best examples of these tiles. And we talk about why Ines loves living the simple life in Portugal. For those of you listening, head over to our YouTube channel to watch some of this episode. And for those of you watching, click down below and subscribe. And for the full podcast episode, go to Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And now, over to my conversation with Ines. Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of Portugal, the Simple Life. And I'm delighted to be joined here by Ines Feliciano. Ines, hello, good morning, bon dia, and thank you for being on the podcast. How are you?
Bon dia. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Ines, why don't you start off telling us a little bit about you?
So my name is Ines Feliciano. I'm 46 years old. I'm a conservator, ceramic conservator. So I'm specialized in the conservation of Portuguese tiles, which is I'm suspicious, but it is one of the most beautiful heritage we have in Portugal, and we are very proud of it because it's a form of art that we developed in a very proper way, in a very intense way, since the 16th century until nowadays. So Portuguese tiles are very, very special. I have a bachelor in art history. I did my master in ceramic conservation later, and I just started my PhD this year in ceramic conservation, specialized in tiles.
How did this all start? The Azulejos, why is it such an important part of the culture? Just give us a bit of a historical breakdown about why we have these tiles on so many of our buildings.
So it was a taste. We heritage. It was an heritage that came from the Islamic period. This form of decorating, form of art with glazed colors in clay surfaces. So from the 12th century, we have this strong Moorish heritage, more than 400 years of Moorish presence in the south of the peninsula. So even nowadays, you have it in the food, in the words, in the way we look. So we have this very, very strong Arabic culture, Arabic Moorish. I prefer to say Moorish because it is from the Maghreb. And even if you go to Morocco nowadays, you have these glazed surfaces made with little pieces of clay, glaze and cut in geometric forms, and they still do it as they did it in the 12th or 11th century. And on the 18th century, it's like a boom. You have blue and white tiles everywhere. People always ask why they had so many colors and they start doing all in blue and white. Because the Dutch start doing also, and they were very perfect, as they are, very perfect, very well painted. You can compare it in Museu Nacional do Azulejo. You have Dutch tiles, just as an example, and you have the church. It was an old convent, very well painted, blue and white. All the lines in the right place. That's not Portuguese. You feel it. We want everything mingle, free lines, dramatic scenes, dramatic effects, a lot of decoration. Then we had the earthquake. It changed a little because the need to rehabilitate the city, to make it fast, lead to a production of tiles with patterns. simple production, faster. And so we had a decrease of decoration, but an increase of production. And then in the 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution, we start putting, and with the decrease of the with the increase of the society, the financial condition of yes, you can say the bourgeoisie. So all the people wanted tiles, so they started producing in industrial way, and then you have the tiles inside and outside. Portuguese people are a little vain. They want to show what they have, so they put the tiles on the outside of the buildings in Lisbon. And as soon as I start working in art history, I start studying conservation. First, technical for my training here in Lisbon. I went to Italy also to study a little. Then I did my master here, and since then, for 20 years now, I've been doing ceramic conservation, specialized in tiles. And when you work in conservation of tiles, you touch them, you start knowing them, the materials, the way they were built. Sometimes imagine when we restore tiles made in the late 18th century after the earthquake, they were produced so fast, even in a traditional way. And you have little shells and things from the sand in the back. Amazing. Or in the clay. So it's quite interesting, the things working on that. So tiles were my passion since ever, since I remember.
Why is this so important to us, that we preserve these things and restore these parts of our architecture and our culture?
I believe is culture. Most of all, we respect the old and the elder a lot in our culture. You see the connection we have to our family, to our parents, grandparents, to our origins. People, even if they live in big cities like Lisboa or Porto, in special days they go home in Christmas. So you see that people always go home in Christmas, even if the family is from the top north or top south of Portugal. We are small, it's easier. But even so, we have these strong connections.
Beautiful. Take us through north to south of Portugal. Some of your favorite places with beautiful azulejos. It doesn't have to be too many. Maybe try and keep it to 5. I know it's going to be difficult. It's a difficult question, but just some of your favorites.
Well, you can start in the north, in Viana do Castelo. You have a beautiful. I should remember the name, but you can search for it.
We'll search.
So in Viana do Castelo, you have this fantastic. I think it's the main church. Beautiful church full of tiles from the 18th century, from the Ciclo dos Mestres. Then you can come to Porto, and of course in Porto you have also a strong presence of tiles outside and inside. Porto has a special characteristic in the use of tiles after the Industrial Revolution. Most of the ceramic factories were there. So you have these relief tiles on the buildings, on the outside on the facades of the buildings, with beautiful colors and relief shapes, something that Bordalo inspire also. But you have these fantastic buildings. You have São Bento train station, most recent from the 19th, but you have these facades full of tiles with strong colors and relief, and beautiful stamped patterns also from the industrial period, very with a contrast with the dark stone of those buildings, very beautiful. Then you can come to, you have Ovar with in a simple way of understanding, and Aveiro, mostly Ovar, with the patterns of stamped tiles in small houses. and they are very careful about them. There's projects of rehabilitation that develop with the University of Aveiro, and they have done a beautiful work.
What are these things that you appreciate about your country?
Well, I'm in love with my city, so it's like coming back to something you love a lot. And we have all these difference of cultures, and as a Portuguese, we have this open mind for different cultures, different people. I can tell you that in Oman, the Portuguese were the ones that mingle. I went to marriages of friends of the colleagues from the museum, and celebrating iftar in the Ramadan period, which is the dinner after when the sun goes down. And we mingle a lot, and it's fascinating to have these cross cultures events and try foods, but when you come here, it's something that goes to your soul, you know. It's the music, it's the sound of the bells in the church, especially Lisbon is my city, is that smell of the winds, is the sound of the seagulls in the city. There's something about Lisbon that makes me. I live in Alvalade, which is not in the city center. It's near everything, and I live near the airport, which is not very comfortable nowadays. But sometimes I think I could live somewhere else. I could go apart from Lisbon. I could go from direction to Cascais. You have a great, fantastic life there. But it's the culture. Lisbon is a city full of culture. You always have events. You always have concerts from music all over the world. You have theater. You have workshops. You have visits to galleries. So much to do. And I think that's the best offer Lisbon gives you. It's that strong offer of culture.
Wonderful. Ines, a question that we ask all of our guests. Portugal, the simple life. Why?
Because of our soul here.
Good answer.
That's why it's simple. It's our soul. It's simple.
Wonderful.
We always look to the bright side of life.
Wonderful.
Not all the days, all day, but we do.
Ines, I've loved this conversation. I've learned some things which I always love doing. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It was a pleasure. And thank you to do this work, telling other people about Portugal and feeling them welcome, showing us our soul.
Yeah, it's a joy. It's a joy for me to do it as well. Ines, I'm going to let you call it.
Okay. Don't remember the name.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
So thank you once again to our guest, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. Don't forget, Portugal The Simple Life also has a magazine, so download it. It's for free. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and as we say in Portugal, sejas bem-vindo. Welcome to The Simple Life.